talk to the person right in front of you online or in real life. Because if you're talking to the people right in front of you in your audience, or the people who are already showing up there and not just looking for who the most famous person in the room is that you can talk to, you're going to make that person feel really, really good. And you never know what connection is sitting right next to you who is being completely underestimated.
Hi, and welcome to the Innovative Mindset Podcast. I'm your host, Isolde Trachtenberg. On the show, you get my conversations with peak-performing thought leaders, creatives, and entrepreneurs. We explore how you can innovate through creativity, compassion, and collaboration. I believe that innovation combined with compassion and creative thinking can save the world, and I aim to bring you ways you can do it too. If you're enjoying the show, I'd be super grateful if you could support it by buying me a cup of coffee. You can buy me a cuppa at buymeacoffee.com/Isolde. And now, let's get on with the show. Hey there, and welcome to the Innovative Mindset Podcast. My name is Isolde Trachtenberg. I'm super happy you're here, and I'm thrilled to have back a guest who's one of my favorite people. Lauren Davis she's a brand strategist, she's a coach, she's a specialist in all things PR. She's amazing. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you need to go follow her Instagram account right now, because she's incredible. I'm going to give you even more information later, but really first, I just want to get right to the conversation with the amazing Lauren. Hi, Lauren. Welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you bringing me back onto the show, and I love your podcast, and I love all of the creative things you do and all of your guests. So it's an honor.
Oh, you're so sweet. Thank you so much. So I want to talk to you. Actually, let's just dive right in, because I've been sort of following you and stalking you for at least the last year, and I've watched such amazing things happen for you. And one of the most incredible things is you took a hit podcast and you changed it all up. You pivoted like crazy, and you went from one sort of stream into something completely different. And I'd love it if you talk about that transition for yourself. What led to it? How did it go? And where are you now? I know that's like 14 questions in one, but feel free to jump on in on any of them.
Okay, so I'll start somewhere in here, and then you can feel free to ask any questions along the way. So
awesome.
It all began in early 2020, like so many great ideas did, right? And I started cultivating this idea actually before 2020, in 2019. Started cultivating this amazing, what I thought was an amazing idea of a podcast that would talk to the thought leaders that I work with, admire, go to their events, and participating at their event in some capacity. All of these amazing entrepreneurs, they're putting on these events for people to learn more from, get better at building their business, learning how to scale, and marketing and all of those things, right? And so I'd go to these events, and I, as someone who creates a social media event in my own hometown called Social Rock with some amazing powerhouse individuals, I would look at the event from this outsider lens of like, I'm here for the event, I'm here to learn, but I couldn't stop noticing bits and pieces about what made that event special, why people were showing up for that particular thought leader who was putting on the event, whether it was a workshop, a mastermind, or a big event, right? Mm-hmm. A big conference with hundreds of thousands of people. So I started looking at it from that viewpoint. I was like, what makes this event special? What makes people come from all over the universe to come to this event in London or in San Diego or wherever it might be? What is it that makes this thought leader so special? And I thought, I'm going to make a podcast about this. I am going to create a podcast where I sit down with the thought leaders behind these big events or small events or mastermind weekends and kind of get to know what their thought process is behind that event, how they planned it, all the little ins and outs, all the little bits and pieces that we don't see when we see the finalized event. Mm-hmm. The sound, the technical things, the dream behind the event. why that event is so important to them. Like, I just wanted to like really understand more deeply why these entrepreneurs were putting on these events and what made them so dynamic. And as I was doing that, gearing up to have this podcast about live events and live in-person masterminds and workshops, you know, COVID-19 kind of rampaged through the country and through the world and through everywhere. And so live events were essentially shut down.
Yeah.
And, you know, when I remember, I think we all thought in March, we thought, you know, maybe this will be a few months and it will dissipate and we'll all kind of go back to normal and events will come back. Maybe it'll be 3 months. Okay, maybe it's going to be 8 months. All right, maybe it's going to be a year. You know, and here we are a year later. You and I are recording this almost a year after the date I started that podcast. So I started it at the very end of February. So this is, you know, we're recording this in the middle of February, and it will be a year since I launched that podcast, and it was called the Business Event Playbook. Mm-hmm. Okay. So, any questions so far?
No, you're doing great. Okay. I do have questions, but I love the flow of what you're saying. So please keep going.
Okay. So as the year started and as we realized that events would not be taking place, I said, you know, what is it that I really do? Like that podcast was awesome because I got a chance to sit down with entrepreneurs who are building these events and really get to understand them, get to know them. But what is it that I really do in my business? What I do is I am a personal branding consultant. I'm a marketing consultant. I help thought leaders understand just how much their online presence matters. You know, because it's so easy to hand your online presence off and to delegate it. But the things that happen online can be the catalyst to your success. Like the way that you show up digitally is so important. So I'm a personal brand strategist, and what all of that kind of stuff, like the event space, had to do with personal branding is that this was one other pillar of building that personal brand. Mm-hmm. Having an event is one way to build your audience. Some people have a platform, they pick their platform, right? Some people have a podcast and that's their main platform. Some people have the stage, they're a speaker, that's their main platform. And other thought leaders and entrepreneurs, they plan events and that is their main platform. That is their podcast. That's their blog. That's their YouTube, you know? So I really was like, okay, so this is what I'm passionate about, deeply passionate about, is personal branding. So I'm going to turn my podcast, the Business Event Playbook, into the Real Personal Branding Podcast. Because as you know, Isolda, and you know, anyone that knows me knows I'm kind of built on this idea of I want you to use social media and I want you to use your digital presence as you would with building real connections in real life. I believe that everyone should, I believe that the reason why social media doesn't feel aligned for some people is because they're not using it the way that we use it in real life, or the way that we make connections and build relationships in real life. And so that's my goal and my mission. And so the Real Personal Branding Podcast just fit. And so now I get to bring those stories to life about events through this podcast. Still, I can pull them through and talk about the platform, talk about the planning of the event, how it all works, how it all comes together. But I can also talk about more things now. I can talk about PR. I can talk about social media. I can talk about how to get better podcast interviews and what to do with podcast interviews after you're on. I can do a whole bunch more that really fits into who I am as a person and what I talk about and what I really teach my coaching clients and my clients that work with me. And it feels much more aligned and much more exciting. So now it's the Real Personal Branding Podcast. And it's your VIP access to thought leaders, speakers, authors, coaches, and the secrets behind how they built their personal brand businesses.
Wow. Okay. Wow. I feel a little bit like I'm dumbstruck, and here's why. I'm amazed at everything you just said, but I'm so curious and fascinated by the awareness that it took for you to go, who, not only what is the world doing right now with COVID-19, but who am I in this world and what should my mission be? Can you talk a little bit about how that came to be? Where did you find the awareness and how did you get to that point of change, that point of I'm going to make a change because I want to be more true to myself?
Well, I think that if I'm really thinking about it, I think that as I saw what was happening unfolding in the United States and all over the world, I was mortified, first of all, as someone who, feels feelings pretty hard. I was just very worried about people and worried about, how I could help. Like, I just felt that I couldn't help, and I, like, no matter what I did, I didn't know what I could do to fix anything. Um, so I had been so excited about this podcast, so excited about the launch of it. And as things were unfolding, I just realized, like, this is probably not the podcast for 2020.
Right.
Because even at one, I did not feel the same about a podcast that outlined every person's virtual event. And people were like, well, just talk about virtual events. I was like, to be honest, like, who wants to listen to 12 episodes about virtual events? No one even wants to go to 12 virtual events. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's not the point. Like, what I talk about in my podcast is bringing people together and how influential and impactful that can be for your brain and for your brand and for your network and building that, for introducing you to people, for expanding who you are. But what I do think is what 2020 gave us is more access to people. And so for that, I'm thankful. So that's what I started realizing is like, okay, I don't want to have a podcast about virtual events, but what I do want to do is expand my network. And I need to keep this podcast going because it was something that felt so good to me. And I could have just shut it down right there. Like, I could have definitely just quit, because it would have been so easy to do that. But I was like, here I am with episodes lined up to release. I have a brilliant network of people that I've met over the years and connected with and become friends with and become close friends with, even some of them. And now suddenly I have more access to people because everyone is all of a sudden online because they don't have all of the in-person events and opportunities that are crowding their mental space. So how can I use 2020 and the access that it provides me to a much greater network online to help people and help them have excitement and opportunity for when everything not returns back to normal, because I don't think anything's ever going to be the same, but for when things even out a little bit and we're able to start going to events, planning live events again, or building our businesses in a way that was similar to what we used to do. I thought, how can I really propel this forward and make it something that inspires me again, but also just helps people keep that inspiration in building their business? Because so many people got to work when 2020 started. So many people put their heads down and said, hey, I'm getting to work now. This is the time. I finally have more time at home, or I may be stuck at home and working remotely, and I want to pour into myself now. And I said, this is the perfect opportunity. And I just went with it and I didn't look back because I couldn't. If I looked sometimes, and I don't know if you feel like this, Isolde, but with me, sometimes if I look too much around me and I don't put the blinders on, then I'll get too distracted by myself. I'll say, I don't think I can do this anymore. Or here's a million reasons why I can't.
Right.
So I just said, I'm not looking back. I'm doing this. I'm changing it. I fielded some feedback from some of my friends on the name change. I said, hey, can I change? Do you mind if I change it? Or not, do you mind if I change it to this? Does it make sense? And, I got some good feedback. People liked it. This is the name I settled on. And I said, okay, I'm doing this. Here we go. Started relaunching my podcast again. So it was a rush and a whirlwind. But I'm happy to say the podcast is doing great. And if I had worried about it for too long, I would have never done it. And I think a lot of us are in that boat. Some people are natural action takers, right? They get something in front of them and they're like, I'm going to take action right now, right away. For me, I'll just be completely honest. It takes me a second sometimes to take action because I am a recovering perfectionist and I like to make sure that everything is just right. So one side of me is that perfectionist, and then one side of me is that artist and that creative. And it's saying, like, go try to do this, or like pour into your art, pour into your passion. And I feel like there's all of these, I feel like if I stop sometimes to look around me and to say, like, oh, here are the reasons why you're not ready for this yet, then I'll never do the things that I want to do. And so that's how this podcast started. That's how generally everything I've ever done has started.
I love it. And it's so you're so very wise, and I agree completely. Sometimes if you stop and you look around instead of going, you'll let I'm the same way. I'll let things dissuade me or distract me, and then suddenly 6 months have passed and I think, "Oh, I was going to do that thing and I didn't do that thing. What's up with that?" And it's so funny to course correct that way when you're in that space.
Yeah.
Um I'm you said something that I thought was really interesting about, I mean, everything you're saying is interesting, but this thing kind of made me go, huh. So, so when you work with people on your show and even clients, you said that it's about networking and networking in real life versus networking in virtual life.
Hmm.
I'm wondering, you said you help people figure out how to network through these virtual events. And that's something that personally I go, huh, the only way I know to network in virtual events is to be helpful, right? That's the only thing I know how to do is go be helpful. That's
Right.
my go-to. What are your thoughts on that? What if somebody's going to a virtual event and you said yourself, that's a lot of going to virtual events is tough. How should we network? What do you suggest as a strategist? What do you suggest someone who perhaps isn't used to doing this virtually like so many of us are not? What should we do?
Well, I think there's a lot behind what you just said and being helpful. So showing up to the things and being valuable in whatever opportunities that virtual event is putting in front of you. Let's talk about the technical side though, because a lot of times virtual events will have a Facebook group or a thread or like a Slack channel, something like that, where you can connect with people from the event inside there. And many times there are questions in those Facebook groups. People have asked questions or said something and it's just crickets. No one's answering them,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that gives you the opportunity to stand out and answer people. So I always say whenever there's a Facebook group, don't be afraid to be the one person in the room who is liking people's posts, commenting, posting that photo introduction of yourself. Do it because it might feel weird to you or might feel uncomfortable, but everyone's thinking of themselves. They're thinking, I can't post a picture of myself right now because of this reason and this reason. And maybe my hair is not perfect, or maybe I don't like the lighting today, or I didn't get dressed for a picture. And whatever the reason that they're coming up with in their head to not participate in whatever group situation there is at a virtual event, they're having that reason about themselves. So if you take that first chance and you do it, you lead the way, and people are going to remember that. Secondly, people are asking those questions, like, hey, what my favorite my favorite, an email goes out from the event organizer and it says, post your favorite session in the Facebook group here. And one person does it and no one else does it. And it's crickets. That's your opportunity to make that person feel good about posting. Even though you're not the event organizer, you're someone maybe attending the event, strike up a conversation in the comments of that post. One, it helps the event organizers or the thought leaders putting on the event, and it helps them notice you a little bit more as a leader. And then two, it helps the person who went out of their way to actually post something not feel as alone. And I think if we can, we as human beings, we want things to move fast, we want things to happen quickly. Me too. I always want things to happen faster than they do. And we think, like so if you were at a networking event and you walked up to someone and you guys struck up a conversation, and that person was like looking off behind you to like behind your shoulder, looking at the next person they were going to talk to, you wouldn't feel very good, right? So talk to the person right in front of you, online or in real life, because if you're talking to the people right in front of you in your audience, or the people who are already showing up there and not just looking for who the most famous person in the room is that you can talk to, you're going to make that person feel really, really good. And you never know what connection is sitting right next to you who is being completely underestimated. And I know because I've been underestimated 100 times, right? We all have.
Sure.
Secondly, if you were at a real networking event and you were talking to somebody and they just walked up to you and they pitched you and then they walked away, like, what are the chances that you're going to ever talk to them again? You're just not going to, right? But in LinkedIn or on Facebook or on Instagram, we get these direct messages every day that are just straight up pitches. They're just like, hey, buy my thing, or hey, can we set up a phone call, or hey, fake warm greeting, can I talk to you about this? Do you have 15 minutes? And then they keep bothering you, pestering you without you ever showing any mild interest besides accepting their friend request, which is basically like saying hi. So don't be that person at the networking event. Don't be that person that comes up and shoves a business card in your face and pitches you and walks away. Like, this is not gonna work out. This relationship won't work out. Third, if you go to a real networking event and you walk up to someone and you strike up a conversation and you are warm to them, they are warm to you, you understand each other's interests a little better, you clink glasses, and you understand what each other does. Maybe you add each other on Instagram that night or on Facebook, and then the next day you email that person and say, hey, it was so nice meeting you. Do you want to meet for coffee to chat about more of what we talked about at the event last night? Sure, that sounds great. You meet up for coffee, you kind of connect there, and then you decide to do business together. And it takes like so many different touch points to get to that coffee shop where you're doing business together. But for some reason online and in online networking, we think that it's going to happen immediately. Like, it's going to happen on that first message after I accept your LinkedIn request. No, it's not. So you have to, if you're struggling with social media and you're saying, why isn't this working for me? This course or this growth hacker told me that all I have to do, it's a numbers game, and all I have to do is message 100 people, and eventually someone will say yes to a phone call, and then I'll be able to get them on a sales call. If it feels not aligned to you, that's probably because that's not how you make relationships in real life.
That's so true. And I agree completely. And there's a weird thing, and maybe it's just not understanding how it works through the virtual space. For me, like in your Facebook group, which I love, and I want to talk so much about your Facebook group. One of the things that you did it gave me the warm fuzzies, and I loved it. So I was pretty active in your group, and you did a sort of a recognition post that said, hey, the most active person in the group is Isolda, which I thought was really sweet. And so that's a testament to you and what you do, which is you pay attention. You recognize the people in your space who are participating. And in live events, in a situation where I meet someone and I chat with them and we go and have a drink or a coffee or tea or something, and we're just chatting, that's one thing. But how do you do that in the virtual space? How does that translate to, like in the Facebook group, I was answering questions or whatever because I perhaps knew the answers or could comment. Is that how we do it? Or what are the processes of doing that virtually versus live where you can go, let's go have a cup of coffee?
So my first tip would be to take advantage of the moments where people ask you to introduce yourself. You never know who is silently looking at those things, but not necessarily commenting or liking, and they might need exactly what you offer. So always take advantage in every online every online place to introduce yourself. Now, there are some, I'm sure you've seen it in some Facebook groups. There are some people who say like, okay, let's grow your following, put your Instagram handle below and everyone go follow you there. So that's, I have, mixed feelings about that type of stuff because it's not necessarily the best way to get followers. But what I do recommend in those situations, like in Facebook groups, like that, is to put what you actually talk about on your Instagram and use that as another place to introduce yourself. So whenever I see something like that happen, I say like, here's my Instagram, but before you follow me, this is what I talk about. This is who I am. If that sounds interesting to you, P.S. I also own a record store. If that kind of stuff sounds interesting to you, then by all means follow me. And I love to stay connected and engaged with my followers because I want people to know I'm not looking for fake followers. I'm not looking for followers who aren't going to be connected to me and my content. And so understanding that online is obviously different. Like we're obviously behind computer screens. We're not in person right now. And it's going to be different, but using the opportunities to introduce yourself and to make yourself known go a long way. The second thing I would recommend, and this is just a very technical thing, is to have a same or similar profile picture on all of your platforms and start showing up as who you want to be. So if you want to, if you want to be recognizable, you need to have a profile picture where somebody could, if they saw you in a gas station, but you guys have been connecting online only, and they saw you pumping gas, they'd be like, hey, are you Izolda? Make sure that they can recognize you in person, online and offline, and that it's not some like overly filtered crazy photo, but maybe that does look professional, so they know that you are taking yourself and your business seriously. That goes the same for, make sure your photo's not super little, so people can actually see you. Like make sure it's not like you as a silhouette or something. You want people to be able to recognize you if your goal is to build a personal brand. Another way to take things a step further to network is if you are really interested in what someone is doing. Okay, let me rewind. Don't network just to network. Network with people you're interested in, because then it will feel much more aligned for you. So Izolda, if you were in my Facebook group, which is called Understanding Social Media Marketing for Entrepreneurs.
And is fabulous.
Thank you so much. That is something that I love. Like I love that Facebook group to pieces. It's a free Facebook group, and I just talk about social media tips, but I just think that it's such a dynamic group and it's mind blowing the amount of interesting people in there. But anyways, I got off subject here. So if you were in one of those threads and someone was introducing themselves and they were like right up your alley and you were like, this is so cool, this person is so interesting, then I would even go so far as to, if you had a question for them or if you wanted to know more about their business, just like you would at a networking event, kind of, you could message them. You could say something to them in a message. You could say, hey, I was just saying hi from Lauren's Understanding Social Media group. I love what you do, and it sounds so interesting. Can you tell me more? Or would you like to be on my podcast sometime? Like, feel free to do stuff like that. I've actually seen people in the comments inside the Facebook group connect and open up the relationship to have a podcast interview. I think it was Bob Gentle and Sean Osborne. They connected in my comments in the Facebook group. They had never met before, and now Sean has been a guest on Bob's podcast, and I think maybe the other way around too. And I'm just like, it's mind blowing, right? Like the access we have to people. Bob lives in Scotland. Sean, I can't remember where he lives. I think it was somewhere in the United States here, but they met in the comment section of a free Facebook group started by me, and now they're friends and they're connected online and they're on each other's podcasts. That's cool, right? But it happened organically because they were being friendly with each other and because they each had something that was useful to each other, and they read about those useful things because both of them took the steps to introduce themselves. So don't be afraid to introduce yourself and get out there. And I would say make relationships and network with people without any expectation of anything in return. That would be my biggest tip in life, is to make connections with people and broaden your network without expecting anything in return.
Yes, 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 yes. You're singing my song all over. So yeah, I love what you just said about no expectations. I think that's incredible. And I agree completely. And here's something that's interesting about what I just heard you say. You said feel free to comment and network in these Facebook groups, and I'm wondering, is that the norm? Like, one of the things that you see in some of the Facebook groups I'm in is, you're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to take things offline. So and talk, talk to someone because you've found something that they're doing really cool.
So you're always allowed to network and be kind to one another and get to know each other and ask questions. You're not allowed in lots of Facebook groups to promote yourself. So if you were like, oh, they were like, tell me more about what you do, and you were like, I have a podcast, here's the link to my podcast, that would probably be deleted by a lot of moderators and a lot of different Facebook groups. But if you're like, I have a podcast about this, and and they're like, oh my gosh, that is so interesting, how cool. Like, what are the rules that someone can't message you and say, what's your podcast called, I want to go check it out? There's no, like, you can't put a rule on being a human. You know what I mean?
I agree.
So yeah, like I would say as long as you are following the moderator's rules inside the group, which every moderator has different rules for different reasons, and I'm sure they're all well, like they're there for a reason. I don't recommend going against their rules in any way. Answer in a way that follows their rules, but if you were interested in someone and they were your perfect guest, what would stop you from messaging someone and saying, like, honestly, I loved the conversation that we just had in this room, and I would love to have you on as a guest on my podcast? I think that there's, taking that offline or out of the group is not anything bad. That's the reason why those groups exist, is to help you connect with other people, and to help you most of the time connect with that thought leader as well. But maybe I speak for myself, but I don't really want overly promotional posts in my group. I don't want it to be a constant promotion. And if you notice, I hardly promote anything I'm doing myself in
totally
that
true.
group. I'm much more worried about cultivating a growing and engaged Facebook group where people can learn how to use social media for the benefit of themselves. But that being said, if there's something to promote and somebody has something that they'd like to promote and they ask me, I'll figure out a way to weave it into what I'm doing, or I'll work with them to figure out how to let that be something that the community can use. That being said, not every Facebook group is going to be that way, but follow the moderator's rules, but don't let that stop you from showing your personality, commenting on other people's things, asking them questions about themselves or about their business. It doesn't mean that they are going to promote or use a link or anything like that. It could just be a real question if you're interested in someone. And I don't think that there's any harm in that, as long as you are following the moderator's rules of what is allowed or not allowed in that group.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I'm using myself as the example here. And I want to talk more about why you started the group, what led you to starting the group. What's interesting, I ran across this website recently, which allows you to test what your website would look like to people who are colorblind in different kinds of colorblindness.
So cool, yeah.
And I posted it to Understanding Social Media in your group, and a lot of people came to me and were like, "Oh, I had no idea this even existed," and I thought that was so cool that you didn't bat an eye. You went, absolutely, this goes into the group because why? And the question that I have for you is, what makes you decide if somebody wants to do something like that? What decides you on, yes, I'll allow it, no, I won't?
I want to make sure that everything in my group page, as a moderator, as an admin of it, and as the creator of it, I want to make sure that everything is valuable to people. So when I see something like that, I think, a lot of the people in this group are building businesses, they're building their websites, they're working with a web designer right now. They might need this resource. They might need it as a tool. And I guess I'm just very human centered in that way, that I want to make sure that everything that comes out of that group is going to be valuable to most of the people in the group. So I don't have any like check boxes that I run it through or a filter necessarily right now. I just like to make sure that whatever someone has is going to be useful to the majority of the group members. And I thought that that was valuable. It's inclusive. It is welcoming to people who have, who struggle with colorblindness or who were born that way. And it was, I thought it was a really valuable resource. So I just wanted to make sure that anyone who needed it could use it. And I know that I've thought about that as a designer, my start in design. I've thought about that often. Like, I wonder what this would look like to somebody who is colorblind, because I don't want it to not look right to them. I don't want to not look the same. And so when I saw that, I was like, hey, this is something I've thought about a lot. Thank you for sharing that. And so, yeah, I was very appreciative that you shared it.
Oh, it was absolutely my pleasure. I was like, this is amazing. What a great resource. And so I was
Yeah.
anybody who needs it, right? So let's talk about the group a little bit more, if you don't mind. Uh, what made you this all started relatively recently, like within the last year. What made you decide to begin this? It's a free group and so valuable. The stuff that you put out is incredible. What made you go, this is the next step, and how did you do it?
I think because there were so many things I wanted to share, and I wanted to share them with the right audience. And a Facebook group is a very useful tool for that. So I started my Facebook group in a little bit of a different way than most people might start it. And maybe some of your listeners would start it like this too. So I'm going to explain my experience. And that doesn't mean that this is how every Facebook group starts, but this is my experience. Is I have always been much more about cultivating an audience that really wants to hear from me. And I don't care about having a giant group. I care about having a quality group. So I have only promoted my Facebook group on my Facebook page once or twice. And I've promoted it a few times in the stories of my Instagram. That's it. Because I want people who come to my Facebook group to really want to be there. I want them to participate. I want them to be involved. I want them to comment. I want them to learn from it. So I only want people in there who are really going to take what we're talking about in there and run with it, and who will help other people in the group, who will add value, like we're saying, who will comment on each other's posts, on each other's introductions. That kind of stuff means a lot to me, because that means I'm cultivating a community. It doesn't mean that I'm cultivating just a group that worships me. And that's like the most uncomfortable thing I could ever think of. Like, I want to cultivate a community of people who grow and learn from each other just like we would in real life, because that's what I love doing. I love bringing people together. I love hosting parties. I love hosting networking events in my hometown. I love planning my conference here in my hometown. I love doing stuff that bring people together. And so that was my goal for that Facebook group is, hey, I want to teach people social media tips, and I want to, a lot of people ask me the same questions over and over again. And I was like, this would be an excellent place for me to drop those answers to those questions, to a place where I know the audience is like a captive audience, like they want to learn the stuff that I have to say.
Mm-hmm.
But secondly, I want to bring people together who all are in the mindset of working together and building community together and getting to know each other. And that's how I started my Facebook group. So I hardly promote it. I hardly put it out there. It grows every day, so much that I just ask my admin to take on approving requests because I can't keep up with it. It grows every day, and the people that are coming are people that are exactly in my avatar, my niche. And that's because we started with a smaller group. They all are bringing new people to the group. They're inviting their friends. They're telling people about it. And that's why it just keeps growing, and it's going to keep growing. And it's going to keep going as long as we are all working together, participating, and learning from each other. And that's like all I couldn't ask for. That's all I want out of that group.
That's
Just
fabulous.
a place for people to grow.
And I've invited several friends to to be part of of the group because it is so incredibly valuable. You're doing incredible stuff there. There's something that I really particularly love. In addition to the opportunity to make new friends, which is always really cool, I love your approach to new tech, new apps, new avenues. You put out these videos, and this is how you use Clubhouse. This is how you use this. And the question I'm wondering about is, how do you decide which new app to do one of these videos on? Because there's new social media apps coming out every day.
Yeah.
How do you decide? And how do you approach learning them? And how do you approach teaching them? Again, 14 questions in one.
Okay. So how do I decide which videos to put out there? That's a really easy one for me because it's usually like this. It's like I wake up and there's a wall of people asking me the same question. That's when I decide to make a video. That's when I'm like, okay, I'm going to make this video. When it's like 10 people in one day have asked me, Lauren, how do I use Clubhouse? Like, what do I do? Or Lauren, how do I use Business Creative Suite on Facebook? So it's like those types of things. I either that or I wake up one day and I see that something has changed and it excites me, and I want to put something out there, and teach people how to make their lives more efficient using social media. Because while I want people to be more human, there are some little things that can make a huge difference in your online presence that can make you more efficient. So I do like to save people time, even though I want them to be more human. And the second part of the question was, how do I adapt to new technology and new apps as they're coming out? So first of all, remember I told you sometimes it takes me a second to take action, right? And that's because I'm in learning mode, I would say. And so many times before I get that wall of text saying, can you do a video? I've already been in research mode for a few weeks or a few months. I would say I've been in research mode with TikTok for like a really long time. Since TikTok, since my, young niece and nephew and other people started talking about TikTok, I was like, this is going to be huge. I need to start paying attention. And so I've just been learning how it works, like learning for whenever I dive in, or if I don't dive in and I want to teach other people how to dive in, that's still also, that's also still important to me. So I love learning. I love adapting to new things. And I also think that we all have this ability inside us to either look at innovation and say, this is cool, I am excited about the future, or we can say, oh, pish posh, that's never going to work out. And with social media, traditionally, we have, as a society, we've said, oh, Instagram's for teens, Facebook's only for college students, TikTok is only for Gen Zs who dance. Like it just drives me freaking crazy to hear stuff like that, because the more we say stuff like that, the less likely we are to adapt to new things in the future. And it's moving at the speed of light. It's never going to stop. So we have to look to the future and say like, oh, this is interesting, instead of saying, oh, no way, say, oh, this is interesting, and then start learning and lean into it, even if it feels weird to you, just like try to understand why people are there, what their behaviors are there, why they're using it, what kind of joy it brings them. If you can understand those things, then you can start to understand the platform. So that's what I do. I usually research for a while, and then I talk about it, because I never want to give out information that is not real, or that is just like some kind of information that someone says is going to work, like a hack or something like that. I don't like doing stuff like that. I like giving out real information about how things actually work. And then that's when I decide to talk about it or to teach it, is after I know it through and through, and I'm not giving it out any information that I'm just guessing on.
I mean, it makes everything so, in many ways, simple, doesn't it? It's like what they say about lying. If you tell the truth once, but you lie every day for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
It's interesting though. You brought up TikTok, and I'm one of those people. I've tried to use TikTok, but I don't understand TikTok. So I'm avidly waiting for your how to use TikTok video. Uh, but what it calls to mind for me is that feeling of being awkward. I wouldn't break out in a dance in real life
Right.
unless I've had some wine or something like that. But how does someone, how do you be authentic? How do you be real when what you're feeling is awkward? And as a personal thing, like, oh, I'm personally awkward. I'm personally awkward every single day, all the time. That's not a problem for me. I accept that. But in your business, that's something that feels like you don't want to be as awkward. So how do you reconcile those in your business, and also when you're guiding other people in theirs?
Well, just like in real life, there's like people who have different interests and different things. And most of the algorithms on these social media sites are designed to put the things that are interesting in front of you. So when TikTok came out and the mass public thought like TikTok is just for dancing, it's not just for dancing. Like there's plenty of business content on there. There's plenty of entrepreneurship content. And the more you pay attention to that stuff, the more the algorithms on those platforms are going to put it in front of you. So a great example of this is my friend Alan Langer. He is a sales expert. He
Mm-hmm.
teaches people how to sell things. And he is like, in a matter of a couple of months, just being super consistent on TikTok, has kind of figured out his lane and has landed on a whole bunch of different. He's like, the algorithm is putting him in front of the right people. So it's putting him in front of people who want to be better at sales. He's not dancing. He's not doing any of the like dancing type style videos. He's actually seems to be telling a story in most of the videos, or
Mm-hmm.
telling a tip, or giving a tip. And that's something that we can all get behind. You probably didn't feel that great at podcasting the first couple episodes that you did it, or you probably didn't feel great performing the first time you performed. You probably felt a little bit awkward, right? So
Sure.
it's about choosing the awkward that you want to participate in. And you don't have to be on every platform, of course. You can be on the platforms that you choose to be on, but you can always adopt things, and you can always look at them and say, hey, this is really exciting and it's new, and I want to see if there's anything on here for me, and just kind of work towards it and try it out a few times, see what works for you. I remember, I have a friend who has 180,000 followers on Instagram, but he only has 500 followers on TikTok. And that's probably a little humbling for him, right? Like,
Mm.
okay, he's got a huge audience over here, not such a great audience over here, and he's still figuring out how TikTok works for him. So there's always a little give and take. You're not going to be perfectly good at everything the first time. I know this for sure. My TikToks are mostly about my dog, and there's very little traction on them. And that's fine with me, because right now I'm just learning. I'm just like soaking it up and saying, like, okay, I want to see what people in my space are doing on TikTok. I want to see what people in personal branding, in social media, in all of these different things are doing on TikTok. Don't worry so much about getting behind as don't worry about getting behind. Worry about showing up as yourself. That's the thing that you should be focused on. So yeah, don't stress out about like, oh, they have so many more followers, or they got started earlier than me. Just start today. Just start today by like figuring out, like, how can I let me look up hashtags that are in my niche. Let me pay attention to people who are talking about the same types of thing as me. Start writing down inspiration, and just help yourself get creatively inspired by new tech and by new apps instead of saying like, oh, that's never going to work. And not for you, for everyone.
No, totally.
Yeah.
But it actually it applies to me too, and it's not that it's never going to work. It's more I'm never going to have time. You
Yeah.
know, that's something that I struggle with respect to social media in general, and that idea of like, oh, you know, oh, there's this cool Instagram thing I want to do, but then there's a TikTok, and then there's a Facebook, and then there's a this, and then there's a that. What is your recommendation for people who feel fried by something like that? By how many different uh, apps there? Like I was listening to John Lee Dumas talk about this yesterday. He said, you know, Clubhouse is really great about certain things, but can also be a real time suck because you can just start listening, and all of a sudden 4 hours have gone by, and you didn't get done the things you wanted to get done because you were so busy listening to Clubhouse. So what are your thoughts and what are your tips for staying true to whatever social media you decide to do?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I fully agree that social media can be a time suck. So what I recommend is using a timer. And I know you're like, oh my gosh, really? But for real, use a timer on your phone, set a timer for yourself, or even block it into your calendar. I have times that I'm going to be on Clubhouse that I have blocked into my calendar because otherwise I will be on it forever. And I've gotten sucked in before, been in there for a few hours, and you have to kind of actively listen when you're there. So, totally understand that question. What I recommend is that you choose two platforms to start. So you choose one platform that makes social media super fun for you. So I think for Alan right now, that platform that I was talking about with TikTok, that platform would be TikTok for him because he's seeing growth, he's seeing excitement, people are commenting, he's having fun. And then you choose for the second platform, you choose the one that your audience is best showing up on. So he's got a huge audience on LinkedIn too. So I guess that's the second. I have no idea, Ellen, if you're listening. Sorry for using you as an example, but I would say choose two platforms, um, and one is the one that you have the most fun with, it makes you say, I want to open up my social media and look through it for a while, and then choose one where your audience is going to show up the most. Once you can master those two platforms and you have it down to an efficient schedule, efficient timing, then feel free to pull others in and start using others and learning others better. But don't worry yourself about trying to split your time between all of these platforms. Pick whatever amount of time you can be consistent to weekly, because on every platform across the board, consistency is one of the biggest factors in how your content is spread. So pick whatever you can be consistent with on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok, any of the platforms. Pick consistency, and then pick out an amount of time that you can spend on it. And after that, just learn those two platforms and then add more on afterwards.
Fabulous. I love it. I love it. Okay. So, wow, so much. Uh, I could speak to you for the next 6 hours, but I realize that you have a life to get back to. I would love to ask you just a couple more questions
Sure.
before we end. First, what are you most excited about right now?
What am I most excited about right
Mm-hmm.
now? Okay, so honestly, I have so many great guests coming up on the podcast. I'm really excited about that. I have Mark Schaefer, John Lee Dumas, a whole bunch of others. It's really exciting. And when I started my podcast, I thought, oh, in a few years, I might interview some of these guys who I know, and, I know by name and have spent a little bit of time with here and there, but not really anything that, I would consider John Lee Dumas one of the entrepreneur podcasters that people all know, right? So
Sure.
excited about guests like that, excited about all my guests, really. um, I'm excited that I've rebranded it and it feels energizing to me again. And honestly, I'm happy that my family is safe and healthy, and that we made it through 2020 for the most part with everything working out. That excites me too. I'm excited to be alive and to to be here living and talking to you on this podcast.
Ah, that's fabulous. I love it. I love it. Thank you, Lauren. I'm so excited that you were here and sharing all the wisdom. As you know, I ask this silly little question at the end of every episode. You've answered it before, and I'm actually curious to hear if your answer will be different. So the question is, if you had an airplane that could skywrite anything for the whole world to see, what would you say?
This is I should have prepared for this when you was coming. And it was like, what are the chances that it will be asked again?
100%.
I don't know. That's such a hard question for me to think about because the first time I was on your podcast, I said I'd put my Instagram handle, and looking back at that, I was like, oh, that sounds so promotional. But what I really mean by that is that I want to get connected with people. It's like, that's super important to me, is to keep connecting with people. So, anyone who's listening to this podcast today, like, I want to hear from you, like, I really do. It's not an act or a game or, a joke to me. It's like every interview I do, I hope that I'll make a new friend out of it. Whether that's the podcast host or that's somebody that's been listening. And so that's what I said last time was my Instagram handle, which is L Davis Creative. I think, if I could write anything across the sky, I think I would say, I think it's as cheesy as it sounds. I think it would say, be kind to each other, because what I keep seeing is just this ability for us to tear each other down everywhere. And it's been a rough year. It's been a rough couple of years, I think, for a lot of people. And I think that being kind does not always mean being nice. It means maybe having some empathy for others and trying to understand where they're coming from, but then holding them accountable. That's being kind. I think that we all could use a little kindness, so that way everyone can start healing. And that's what I would want to put up there as a message. I think that if I looked up into the sky right now and I saw that, I would say that would make me feel happy.
And that's all we can ask. I think kindness is key. Lauren, thank you again so much for being on the show. I really appreciate you taking the time. I'm super excited about all the work you're doing, and I'm excited about the podcast. Go listen to the podcast if you have not been. It's amazing. This is Isolde Trachtenberg, and I'm reminding you to tune in, subscribe, and remember to listen, learn, laugh, and love a whole lot. Thanks so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you being here. Please subscribe to the podcast if you're new, and if you like what you're hearing, please review it and rate it and let other people know. And if you'd like to be a sponsor of the show, I'd love to meet you on patreon.com/innovative mindset. I also have lots of exclusive goodies to share just with the show's supporters there. Today's episode was produced by Isolde Trachtenberg and is copyright 2021. As always, please remember this is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Past performance does not guarantee future results, although we can always hope. Until next time, keep living in your innovative mindset.